Greetings and very welcome back to my humble neck of the YouTube woods. We are gathered here today, guys, to try and get stuck into the questions and answers shenanigans for reaching 600 subscribers, that milestone. And I've basically got more questions than I anticipated from 6 or 7 people, which as I mentioned is more than I expected, so fair play, guys. And some of them are real head scratchers. So I'm going to try and swiftly get through them, not spend too much time on each because we don't want to be here all day. And this is a nice little pocket of time where I can do this swiftly. And it's different for the channel, which is always nice, to try at least once and see how it goes. And it's a nice day, still nice and autumnal. Cinnamon is here, but don't mind her. She's chilling in the background, And they're not in chronological order. I just kind of screenshotted them on my phone and wrote a little note just to remind myself, And first up is Gulpain, the legendary gaming, vegan, football-loving boyo himself, PSP master at this stage. And he asks, 3 games, you're stranded on a desert island, what would you bring? Okay, so I went with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. That's 3 games in one, basically. If that doesn't count, I'll choose Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 gets a lot of guff, but I actually like how it wrapped everything up and unified the galaxy and, so on and so forth. So, next up, Resident Evil Remake. That kind of speaks for itself. I love the original Resident Evil as well, of course, but this just made it, more beautiful, bigger and badder. I actually have the screensaver in the background there on the PlayStation 5 of the Spencer Mansion, if you can see it. And I went with World of Warcraft as the third, just thinking, a bit cheeky again, just thinking that if you went from the current expansion pack, say, you'd have so much content and you could spend so much time on it, if there is indeed the internet on this hypothetical desert island. There is power anyway, but just in case, that doesn't count and is invalid, I went with Bioshock 2. And the thing that the Mass Effect games, Resident Evil Remake and Bioshock 2 have in common for me is that I'm not one to replay games quite often, but each of those titles I've gone back to as the years have gone by, and I've completed them numerous times. Even gotten platinums on Bioshock 2 on the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. There's only one platinum for the remake, but if it was an option, I'd probably go for it again. And I've platinumed the Mass Effects at least twice, I think, as well. So that's my answer. Thanks, Gull. I'll go Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Resident Evil Remake, and World of Warcraft / Bioshock 2. Next up, we have Stu over at Generation Pixel, and he asks, if you could have one console for the rest of your life, what would you choose and why? I'm actually just going to go really modern for this, and I'm going to say PlayStation 5, and that's because of 90% of my, 95% even, of my gaming is on the PlayStation 5 / PlayStation 4. I only got a PlayStation 5 this year. And the why is, well, I just love all the more modern trophy elements and, the share factory elements that you can just upload onto YouTube, and you can just cut and edit. And granted, I'm not very skilled, I'm not very good at it, but nonetheless I do have fun capturing some footage and kind of putting it together and uploading it and so on, and I also just think it's just a beautiful console. It's just the graphics and the games I've played so far are just excellent and really good to play, really fun, So, it's between the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, but I'm leaning towards PlayStation 5 because it has kind of become the more predominant console since I've gotten it, Yeah, the PlayStation 4 still gets a little bit of love, still over there, But yeah, I'd go with the PlayStation 5. Yeah. Thanks, Generation Pixel. Good old Celtic cousin over there in Scotland, Caledonia. Next up, we have Home Gaming Productions, and he asks a few Swift questions. One of them is, what's one interesting fact about you that we might not know? Yeah, I was really scratching my head on this, to be honest. And I just kind of went with something off the top of my head. When I was 6 or 7 years of age, I got hit by a car. So there's an interesting one, kind of. I recall one of my friends ran across the road and I went to run after him. He's about 2 years older than me. And my sister tried to stop me and grab me by the wrist, and I kind of squiggled and wormed my way out of it and was running across the road. And I vividly remember glancing to my left and seeing the car coming and knowing that I wasn't going to make it. And I just done this big jump, and I could just see myself, my foot in front of me, about to get to the path, but not quite making it, and bracing myself for the inevitable impact, which did happen, and I went flying. And I suppose I was lucky. That's why I'm just mentioning it, as in it could have easily been fatal if I had gone under the car or been hit by the wheel. That would have been the end of me. But because I jumped, I bounced off the bonnet and went, I don't know, 8 to 10 feet and slid across the road. And my sister is adamant. I don't remember too much, but I remember I was able to stand up briefly and try to run to her, and then I just kind of collapsed. So yeah, that explains a lot about why I am the way I am and so on. But yeah, so that's something strange that I don't think you would have known about me. Full recovery, I think, kind of, apart from the cognitive juices being affected, no doubt. And next up, he asks, what was one of the hardest platinum trophies to obtain? Okay. I'm probably going to say GTA 5 on the PlayStation 3 because I found that very long-winded. And one of my nephews actually helped me do the more tedious elements of it, where he would collect the packages or fly underneath the bridges, for example, with the planes and the helicopters and stuff. I would say Resident Evil Revelations 2 was quite difficult for me as well, quite challenging. Fun platinum, but really difficult. I got it on the PlayStation 3, and I did play Revelations 2 again on the PlayStation 4 relatively recently, but the thoughts of going for the platinum again kind of scared me off, because I remember that it was quite difficult and long-winded, Shakiro Shadows Die Twice is another one as well, because I never mastered the deflect element of that. So I got the platinum kind of the hard way by ducking and dodging and, the long-winded kind of ways of taking on bosses and stuff, And Operation Raccoon City, I think, was actually quite difficult as well. I remember there was a particularly difficult one online where you had to, beat all of the opposing team, all of them yourself, basically get the final blow on them or hit on them. And I remember being on the ground as Jill, I think, and I had the Samurai Edge, which is the classic Stars gun, and shooting, like I'd gotten 3 out of the 4 enemy players, and this was the last one I had to get, and inevitably the thing is that one of your other teammates will get the kill, and then you won't get the trophy. Well, finally, I managed to actually get the kill, and I just remember shooting this person in the ass, basically, with the Samurai Edge as they were running away, and getting that difficult online trophy. I also remember that there was, to be fair, my nephew Patrick helped me on that one as well, because you had to get an S rank or an S plus rank on the levels in story mode, and one of them was giving me all sorts of trouble. I just kept getting the rank below it for whatever reason. And he has this skill where he will just constantly replay the level over and over and over again and get that little bit better and that little bit more efficient. And I remember him actually getting that, which helped towards the platinum as well. So yeah, fair play, Pato. So there are a few platinums that I found quite difficult. And he also asks, we know one of your all-time favorite games is Resident Evil, but what was your favorite retro titles before Resident Evil came out? To be honest with you, there's only one that really springs to mind, and that's Mario. Yeah, that was the game that kind of got me into gaming to begin with, on the Nintendo, on a hand-me-down Nintendo Entertainment System. And that original Mario just blew my mind. And I also really enjoyed Super Mario Bros. 3 as well. So although I was dabbling in other games at that time, and then obviously when I got the PlayStation 1, I'd kind of moved away from Nintendo gradually and stuck with PlayStation. Mario, without a shadow of a doubt, still holds a very special place in my heart. And yeah, if you were to ask before Resident Evil what was my favorite game series, hands down it would have been Mario. And his last question is, oh, he doesn't actually have a last question. He just has thought he would throw a couple in, bud. Looking forward to the video. So thank you kindly, Home Gaming Productions. Really nice lad. He has a great collection and is really active in the collecting community here on YouTube, and I'm not a massive collector myself, but nonetheless I love seeing that content, to be fair. So yeah, thank you kindly, Home Gaming Productions. Nice one, buddy. And next up we have Decidedly Donna, the vegan activist legend of a lass herself. And she asks a few questions as well, to be fair. She says, if you created your own game, what would the storyline be about? This one really had me stumped. I think it would be amazing to create your own game. And I just, there's so many different genres and games that I'm interested in. It's so hard to pick, But I know I would like some sort of thought-provoking content in it. Something, ethical, something benevolent and wholesome, or at least some sort of redemption arc along the way, because I do love stories in video games, and they're the ones that always hit me the most. So yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I'd go with some story-driven game that I feel would affect people in a positive way. This is the only thing I could fall on at the moment without going into details or specifics. She also asks, in the Valhalla series, what was your favorite episode to work on and why? So she's referring to, in 2022, I stumbled my way into Vikings Valhalla Season 3 as an extra. And I got 35, somewhere between 30 and 40 days work on it over that summer. So it was brilliant, great experience, never done anything like it before, Oh, I don't know now. It's tough, you see, because I remember scenes more specifically than episodes, and the episodes the scenes aren't in chronological order. Obviously, they're chopped and changed and done all over the place, and then they're kind of put together in the end, and then you see it all unfold when it's the finished product. But I would definitely have very fond memories of the semi-mythical Viking stronghold of Jomsburg in Season 3, because that was the first 2-week stint that I did. And by the time I got there, without any spoilers and stuff, it was a much more wholesome place to be. And there was a wedding scene in which we were just kind of dancing and jumping around the place and so on and so forth. So lots of fond memories, and they were the first memories I have of meeting other background artists and extras and conversing with them and getting hints and tips and just having a laugh, It was an ill-fated wedding, of course, as these things are, sadly, in these types of mediums. We ended up getting poisoned, and there was a little bit of death involved. But nonetheless, the semi-mythological Viking stronghold of Jomsburg is probably up there. I also had a great time with the Danish Midsummer, and it was basically us just dancing and frolicking around in Denmark, which was actually Powers Court, in Ireland. And we had this big, huge, gorgeous oak tree, and the lady, one of the actresses, was saying this is Yggdrasil, the tree of life, and it was just 3 days of, I think we were told that the weather was going to be really bad and to prepare to be wet and cold and so on. And as it turned out, it was completely wrong. We got nothing but sunshine and in good company and just running around and having a great time. And also, to be honest with you, anything to do with Kattegat. Because I was familiar with the original Viking series, um, it was really surreal to be in the fictional kind of city of Kattegat, which was kind of become a big character in its own right throughout the series. You know, it was just very well known. An awful lot of the main characters kind of come from that neck of the woods, without spoiling anything. So yeah, so because I was familiar with that and was fond of the series, anytime we were filming in the studio in Kattegat or in the different locations outside County Wicklow, that was always a really fun experience as well, you know. So thanks for that, Donna. Hopefully I muddled my way through. And she still has, if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be? Now, I could go on forever on that. But essentially, you know, I'd like a values shift. People to be less apathetic and greedy and selfish, and lean more towards kindness and compassion and general benevolent actions and so on, you know. Um, yeah, definitely. Particularly towards the most vulnerable, of course. Donna being a legendary vegan animal rights activist, you know, animals are the most vulnerable among us. And at the moment, non-vegans unfortunately still see them as products or property or, you know, something rather than someone. So that would change overnight if it could, in my eyes, you know. So yeah, I think without going into too much detail, that would be the gist of that. Um, and then she also asks as our last question, do you have a favorite vegan dish? Um, I'm not much of a foodie, truth be told. Um, you know, I have two very general basic rules when it comes to grub. And that is it's vegan, animal friendly. And then the next thing I'm usually concerned with is the portion size. You know, I'm not overly fussy. As long as it ticks those two boxes, I'm usually happy. Um, but I am quite fond of, you know, anything kind of potato orientated, you know, potato wedges, chips, mashed potato, you know, baked potato, you name it. Typical Irish guy in that regard. Um, I have been going to a place called Umi Falafel in recent ones as well, so falafels are quite nice. And I do have a hankering for some lovely vegetable curry with rice from time to time. Um, so they're just straight off the top of my head, things that I like. I'm definitely a savoury type of guy. I don't have much of a sweet tooth. My nephews do be, I have two vegan nephews, thankfully. Um, and they'd be sending me messages of various junk foods that are animal friendly, which is great to see, but doesn't really float my boat. Not my cup on tea. I'm much more inclined to go in and get like a big juicy vegan burger, you know, or vegan sausage roll, or you know something savory, more dinner orientated. Um, so yeah, that's the gist of that. Baby, but I didn't mention baby potatoes as well. Good one. Um, and chickpeas are growing on me madly enough, and mixing up different types of beans, you know, like with the curry sauce or tomato sauce and so on and so forth. But yeah, so hopefully that's sufficient, Donna. Thank you very much as always. And next up we have another vegan legend. If I can be vegan, what's your excuse? Eloquently put, good sir. And he has one question, and what is it like working on a show, and how did you find yourself in that industry? Um, so the gist of it is after my mum passed away, sadly, um, I started spending more time in the family home and with my father. And one of the things that we did was watch the original Viking series from start to finish. So that in of itself, kind of just watching these stories and characters, you know, rise and fall on their highs and their lows, and it was more philosophical than I thought it would be as well. To be fair, um, yeah, it was a nice bonding experience with me and the father to watch this series from start to finish, because by the time it ends, you feel like you've been through the ringer with these people. You know, bit of an emotional roller coaster to say the least. And in 2022, kind of the back end of COVID, I kept getting these things on Facebook, just little alerts saying that Valhalla Season 3 was starting and they were looking for any type of background artist. Anybody would do, all different shapes, sizes, creeds, and so on, but obviously just the general generic look of somebody with a beard and relatively long hair. And over the years, Vikings has always been filmed in Ireland, so it's been going for like 10 or 15 years. Um, and over the years, I did have people telling me, kind of tongue in cheek, or just you should apply for that because you have that kind of, lanky Neanderthal Viking look about you. And I never really thought much about it. But now that I have actually done it, I would have loved to do this stuff in my 20s, early 20s, even, early 30s. Because I still have lots of energy now and I still love it and enjoy it, but I would have just been bouncing off the walls back then, I would have just really got stuck in. And I just sent off an email, I think. They just asked to take a picture of your mush and send it off to this email address. And I think I was in my sister Dawn's at the time, just having a cup of tea. And TJ, one of the main guys at Ashford Studios, just in charge of all the extras, just called me up and basically said, "Yeah, have you ever done anything like this before?" I said, "No." He said, "Don't worry about it. Come in and get a fitting," and it all went from there, And I got to know a lot of the gang and other extras over the course of that 30 to 40 days, and the rest was history. I just kind of stumbled into it. I just kept seeing these little things pop up on Facebook and on different things, and I said, "Asher, you know what? Why not just send an email off?" And it went from there. So not particularly exciting, but that's the gist of that. Thanks very much. If I can be vegan, what's your excuse? Thanks, man. And also thanks for being vegan for the animals. Legend. And last but definitely not least, it is the wonderful games with Galatea. Now, she asks a few questions for the finale. And the first one is, if you were, it's another background artist shenanigans. I think this stems from me posting some pictures of a recent thing that I did this year for 3.5 months called Blood Axe. I posted pictures just when it wrapped, basically. And I think so these guys have basically seen those snaps, so it's kind of fresh in the memory that we do a little bit of background stuff, just for context. Games with Galatea says, if you were an extra in a game adaptation, what would it be? Ooh, like an NPC extra. I really don't know. It would be kind of really cool to be immortalized in pixelated form. To be honest with you, I've always thought that would be amazing. I wouldn't really be overly fussed, but obviously some sort of good-natured role would be brilliant. Some sort of protagonist. Assisting the protagonist in some way, shape, or form. Oddly enough, there is a vegan animal rights game that Patrick Baboonian is trying to. He's like a legendary vegan strongman. Won all sorts of strongman competitions and so on and so forth as a vegan lad. And that's a project he's working on. It's called Uncage, and it's an animal rights orientated video game, and I supported the project and sent a few bob his way. And there's a slim chance that they could actually put us in the game as an NPC in some way, shape, or form. So it might actually happen, oddly enough, which would be cool. But I never really gave it too much thought. Something positive, something benevolent. The usual shenanigans with me. But it would be really cool to be immortalized in pixelated form. It's kind of a mini dream ever since I was a nipper. So that's a pretty cool question, to be fair. What's the longest non-stop gaming session you've had? When I was younger, not so much now. I can still get sucked into story games now and have a good solid session, don't get me wrong, when free time allows me to. But it has to be casting my mind back, it has to be Warcraft. It has to be something to do with World of Warcraft. Because myself and some close friends used to kind of sit around and have our laptops in front of us and just go on these big long sessions where we'd be teaming together in the guild, you know. Um, so I'd imagine that has to break, and I'd probably say somewhere between at the height of its power, its grip on me, I'd say probably somewhere between 7 to 10 hours. Um, Ordinarily, I'm not one to binge non-stop. You know, I'll always have little interludes where I'll go outside and go for a bit of a soul stroll, or go downstairs and do some mini missions in the house. You know, rustle up a dinner or something like that, and then go back to the game. Um, so you know, a good strong session for me now would probably be an hour or two. Um, and in my old age, I tend to not game too late. I don't know how that's crept in. But I usually hit the hay somewhere between 12 and 1 o'clock on average. And I tend to wind down on the gaming somewhere between, 7 and 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is usually the latest cut off, you know. Um, but interesting one, interesting one. And lastly, since this, she has, what was the first YouTube video you ever watched? And then in brackets, if I can remember. Um, hmm, Getting darker now and everything, so this video is going on for way too long, guys. Darkness is about to fall across the land of Erin. Um, Casting my mind back as best I can, I initially started watching YouTube for the music videos. You know, I love me a bit of music and had fond memories of different music channels, like on Kerrang or MTV and so on and so forth. Um, so I'm pretty sure for the first couple of months on YouTube, I created an account just to make a playlist of my favorite songs and favorite music videos. Because the music videos at that time were so nostalgic, you could just go back and look at various, music videos you watched from your childhood and so on. So I'm definitely sure that the music videos would have been the first thing I was watching on YouTube, and still do. I still have a playlist called God, I'm not sure what it's called, like Venom's Vibes or something like that. I'm not sure, but it's been there since the beginning of the channel basically, and I still add things to it to this day. And if I'm having a relaxing day, or if I'm doing missions and stuff, I can just click on that playlist, put it on shuffle. Even if I'm having a glorious, relaxing hot bath or something, I still use that playlist to this day. So I'd imagine it would be probably something to do with No Doubt. Yeah, they would still be my favorite band. So probably like Don't Speak from No Doubt or something like that would have been the first music video I watched. Certainly among them, anyway. So I hope that's a sufficient answer. Thanks very much, Gally. And she has something else here. Oh, she says, "Oh, what's the most fun extra position you've had?" And she has in brackets, "I think you said you do extra work." If that's how they say it, it is indeed extras or background artists or whatever tickles your fancy. What's the most fun? Um, Valhalla started it all off for me. But this year doing Blood Axe was brilliant. Was absolutely brilliant. There was long hours and it was tiring, and you were exposed to the elements an awful lot. Um, and the big difference between Valhalla and Blood Axe for me was in Valhalla, I was a villager. I was all different types of Vikings villagers, usually around Freydis's storyline. I only got to see Leif and Harold, the other two main actors, at the very end in Kattegat, actually. But I was basically amongst her storyline from start to finish. So I was a citizen of Jomsburg, and then I was a Kattegat guy, and then I was a Greenlander guy, and a Dane in the midsummer thing. But it was all villager stuff for the most part, so it was all kind of mundane and traveling around town and stuff like that. Didn't really get a weapon that often. Wasn't involved in any of the battles, although there wasn't that many big battles in Valhalla Season 2 or 3. But the big difference in Blood Axe was I was a warrior. Throughout the whole thing, I was a Viking warrior. And it's quite battle heavy. So without going into spoilers or anything like that, I was involved with the various factions at different times in about 4 to 5 big battles, in forests, in fields, down by the beaches, by lakes. Just so many brilliant memories of that, and that was all new to me. Even being a guard, with a spear and shield and so on, and yeah. So we got more axes, big axes, little axes, swords. We actually got to fight each other and do a training boot camp. Um, so yeah, this was just more full on, and I got even more days than in Valhalla, which I really didn't expect. It was pretty much non-stop for the 3.5 months. I was one of the most used background artists, so I was very lucky in that way. I got 55 days total, and honestly, just brilliant experience. I have done some other contemporary things. Somebody made their own extras website that was involved in Valhalla, and you know, it was free for us all to join and sign up to it. So I ended up going on a few kind of smaller projects, like maybe 10, doing 3 or 4 days here or there, and it was mostly contemporary stuff, like Flora and Son, which was interesting because I didn't know at the time. I'm so bad with actors and actresses name wise. I'm not much of a filmophile really, And I actually ran into the main actor that was on that particular set, and it was turns out to be Bono of U2's daughter, which I didn't know because I'm terrible at this stuff. But one of the other extras was a big U2 fan and knew her, she's a lovely lass. She's done a great job. Um, I did Power Ballet as well, which was I don't know the actor's name, but he's the fellow who plays Ant Man. Basically, I got to meet him. Uh, that's not even out yet. I think it was either the beginning of this year or late last year. But what I learned is that there's two different types of extras in that regard. Some really love the contemporary stuff, and others really like the more fantastical and different ages and eras. And it's probably because my first thing I did was Vikings. I much prefer the more fantastical, um, or go back in time type things than just meeting someone at a bar or a restaurant. Because I've done that, or just a civilian walking down the street and stuff. It's handy because it's in the city centre and stuff. And when you're doing the other ones, there's more makeup and hair, and you have to get into costume and all this stuff. But I find them much more interesting as I've gone on. Now that I've done about 7 to 10 contemporary modern bits and bobs, that the Viking stuff, and there was something called Sanctuary 2, and the lad who plays Rolo, Ragnar's brother, was in it. Um, so he obviously was more tidied, beard wise, and had shorter hair. But that was like magic. I only did 1 day with them, but that was fun because he was casting spells and locking the door, and we all had to try and escape and run around and imagine that there was crazy stuff happening that they were going to put in later with the magic of cinema. I preferred that. I prefer the hustle and bustle and fighting and chaos. And if you're just sitting around all day, drinking and eating and chatting and stuff like that, some extras love that. The easier the better. I prefer it to be a bit more out there and fantastical or magical or mysterious or something like that. Um, so yeah, I'd say definitely Vikings Blood Axe by far was my best experience. And next up would be Valhalla season 3. And last but not least, I believe I might have said that about Galatea, but we have one more lovely lass here in the form of Pink Princess. And she says she's 2 questions. The first is, what inspired you to become the good person you are today? That's a very kind thing to say, Princess. Thank you very much. But I couldn't really nail it down, to be honest with you. Um, you know, I suppose it's just kind of admiration for kind of people. The older I've gotten, a bit more self reflection, and trying to battle the ego a little bit, and uh, try to be a bit more compassionate and empathetic and kind, and just changing the values a little bit. Um, I'm just seeing other good natured people and just brave people doing the right thing. Um, you know, I suppose that would be it. Animal rights activists, hands down, to me, are the biggest heroes that we have, because unfortunately, it's not the norm. Cultural cruelty is rampant, and you have an awful lot of apathetic or hateful people that will snap at you and snarl at you, and do all sorts of mental gymnastics to kind of boo-hoo and ridicule and not be kind to these people that are essentially trying to protect vulnerable sentient beings as best they can, and push towards a more kind future. So they would be the most inspiring to me off the top of my head. But I've always had a tendency to like people that um, did the right thing, even though it was tough. Those trials and tribulations involved. Um, and so it's really hard to nail that down. Basically, interesting questions. Kind of had me scratching my head. Definitely. And last is, this is definitely the very last question. Nearly 40 minutes in. My God. Um, Question 2: do you collect figures of your favorite games? A little bit more light-hearted, easy breezy question. Thank feck. Um, no, really, is the simple answer. I Hang on. We turn on the yellow light. Let's enlighten ourselves a little bit. I was never much of a collector. I was always a gamer, first and foremost, and very rarely actually collected anything. I did hold on to my Resident Evil games over the years, but they're the exception to the rule. Um, I did have some figures from many, many moons ago of Resident Evil. There was a place called Forbidden Planet in the city centre, and I was probably a teenager or early 20s anyway at the latest. And I did pick up a Jill Valentine from Resident Evil 3 figure, and a Drain Demon from Resident Evil 3 figure, and a large William Birkin mutation from Resident Evil 2, and a Leon figure from Resident Evil 4. And a Tyrant from the original Resident Evil, the Tyrant T001, I believe. So yeah, I did have them for a while, and I had them on display in the room. But they're still around. They must be in the attic somewhere or something. But over time, I just never really added to them, and I just kind of learned I'm not much of a collector in that regard. It's all the clutter. I prefer to have a bit more space, or a balance of it, in my mind's eye. So yeah. Now I do appreciate them. Don't get me wrong. I think some of them are amazing. Even the fluffy toys that I see of like Kirby and Mario and uh, Luigi, they always make me smile. They're good to see. It's really cool when I see somebody who has a collection like that. But it was never really my cup on tea, really. I appreciate them, but never really went down that path myself, in a nutshell. So thanks very much, Pink Princess, and everyone else who asked kind and interesting and thought-provoking questions. So we muddled through this, not too fast in the end. I'm glad I did it now, just on the off chance I got more questions, because we could have been here for an eternity, guys. I shall love yous and leave yous. Look after yourselves and each other. Be kind to all kinds, and slán a bhaile. Cinnamon, do you want to say goodbye? Oh yeah. Oh, Cinnamon says goodbye too. Slán a bhaile, guys. Be good.